Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
Cube Monk, featuring the world's first smart cube. Track your goods with our advanced GPS system. Welcome to the future of moving and relocation at cubemonk.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by heirs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at heirs.com.
Insured Nomads provides protection and peace of mind with health insurance, travel insurance, group, or tailored insurance for the globally mobile. Visit us at insurednomads.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Hi, this is Ed, and this is Global TV Talk Show. Our very special guests today are from Bentonville, Arkansas. Here's Andrew Bruzzi.
Hello, Ed, and pleasure to be chatting with you again. Thank you so much for the invite.
Well, thank you. We're going to be talking with you in a few minutes about a lot of things, but in particular, conversational artificial intelligence. It sounds like an oxymoron, but maybe you can help us with that. We're going to be joined by others during this, but right now from the UK, we have Csaba Toth and Kasia Grabda. Grabda. How should I pronounce that?
It's Grabda.
Oh, well, you do it better than me.
Years of experience.
So, Csaba, when I'm mispronouncing names like that, that's kind of a bad thing to do in your world, isn't it? According to the global disc.
I think it depends on how you look at it. I'm getting used to it because I cannot expect other people to know how to pronounce it properly if it's not a typical name. And I think I make enough mistakes as well, so who am I to judge them? I would rather correct them if it's needed. If not, then I just play it safe. If I call a taxi, I say I'm Tom. It's easier than explaining there's Csaba.
So your book has taken on extended life here recently, and I think it's because of all the U.S. shenanigans and politics going on. Okay, so tell us about your book from today's perspective as opposed to a year or so ago before it came out.
I mean, I think what's happening in the US is not really unique. It's just more visible because people are paying more attention, but the same dynamics happen everywhere. And unfortunately, the problem is that we hang out with people who agree with us. So they just confirm our beliefs and we harden those assumptions into facts. And then we widen the gap between the different groups. We minimize the differences within the group. We maximize it between them. And we can see this tribalism everywhere. And I think one of the main reasons is that the world is uncertain now. It's falling apart around us and people are craving certainty. So where do you find that? You're looking for authority figures with confidence and people like you. Excellent combination. And then we can see the result of that.
Wow. Andrew, so where does technology enter into all this?
Sure. So, Ed, you and I have had a number of great conversations about conversational AI, and you're soon to have your bot live as well. So it's exciting stuff. So we found that, especially when we're trying to organize things, and right now we have a lot of organizations that do cutbacks and they are looking for efficiencies, then anything that you can use to automate it or help people get information. I think that kind of breaching the gap of ambiguity is one of the biggest things that we need to do as business leaders. And being able to do that with technology is at the forefront of what we can do to kind of get a leg above not just the competition, but ourselves. That we spend so much time on the admin work of trying to deliver information to our teams of whether or not it's hey, there's an update, this thing's going on. And if we can do that through an automated means, then that makes all the difference.
So here we have two sides of the coin here. One is tech, and the other is, mental awareness. All right? And so let's bring it together. Csaba, unusual times, sure, we're in them. But people are reinventing themselves, reinventing their product, sort of out of desperation, but also by design. And one of the things I'm using as a marketing pitch is grow global. And so how do you do that? So the culture aspect, in other words, being accepted and not as a jerk, but as just a person who comes from a different place with people who also come from different places. So how do you get out of yourself and to be more welcoming, to understand people who are different from you?
You start with self-inclusion. Because when you look at our field, and everybody talks about diversity and inclusion, and they paint everything rainbow colored, and they celebrate diversity, which is really important, but it's missing a really important step, and that is the self-inclusion. Because if you know exactly who you are, what you stand for, and you are even okay with it, then you don't have to bully anyone to feel important, and you don't have to hide to feel safe. Then you can say, you know what, sorry, I don't know. Or, sorry, I made a mistake. Insecure people are not going to do that. They are going to blame everybody else. They want to change the external environment instead of focusing on the only thing they can control, and that's their own mindset. But when you're really confident, we can do it. So even the title shows that, uncommon sense. Because, for example, if I tell you that you're such a good-looking guy because you look exactly like me, that's not really a praise. But this is what most people think about when they demand common sense or they praise someone for common sense. They just say, oh, you think like me. That's fantastic. You're so smart. It doesn't mean like that. But when we have a disagreement and I know that I'm right, then the default position is that it's obvious that you are wrong. And especially if there's no psychological safety and also there's no confidence, then I have to put all that energy into proving that I'm smart and you're not. I win, you lose. So there's a problem with that. But if you are aware of this topic and you have uncommon mindset, you know that the other person might disagree with you, but the life and the decision makes sense from their perspective. So let's ask the right questions. What do you know that I don't? What can you see that I cannot? If you are able to see this and do this, then diversity can lead to innovation. Otherwise, it turns into painful liability. And that's the most important part. The question is not binary. Who is right, you or me? But is there an even better solution? That should be the question. And then you can just remove this illusion of superiority or illusion of separation. Is there an even better way of doing things? That should be the real question.
So manipulation through words and power structure gets in the way of that. So as an example, and this is not politics, it's just discussion, U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell, Republican, smart dude, a lawyer and a judge for many years before being U.S. Senator. What he did yesterday or the day before with the impeachment thing was, actual Machiavellian. I mean, in the current day, the way he twisted things around and made it come out the way he needed it to come out and retain a power position in a relationship. And relationship with who? Well, the only relationship that counted in that was with Senator from New York, the new majority leader, Schumer. Power struggle. Okay. And then he manipulated the decision to vote acquittal against Trump, but also said he's not going to escape because he can still be sued after leaving office. And so Trump's now coming on like Mr. Hero, and which is sweet music to his followers and, vomit to everybody else. But the power structure by McConnell is that McConnell becomes the leader of the Republican Party, not Trump. And Trump's trying to do something that, scare everybody there. And so now we have this big dance going on. And so it's unusual times, and it's really uncommon what we're seeing happening. But very few people understand it. And it's fascinating. So I'd like you to comment on that and how it relates to the theme of your book, and to talk about uncertainty. Boy, it's in spades now. And Andrew, if you could join the conversation on that, but also take it later after Csaba into the use of technology to parse things and put things in some kind of understandable order. Csaba? Yeah.
Trying to find logic in politics is very difficult. And we cannot explain everything with science because you never know what's happening behind the scenes. But if you put that in a corporate context, imagine that you have a leader who says something, but then they do the exact opposite. That is going to lead to real disengagement. If your words don't match your actions, people become scared and uncertain, and they are in survival mode. And they put more energy on protecting themselves and their position than on creating something and innovating. And that's the biggest problem. So it's better if you're a bad person, but at least an honest bad person. So at least you have integrity in a bad way. But when there's such a big gap, that's a real problem. That's when you lose trust. And you think that you are tricky, and it's short term, maybe it works, but in the long term, with the right people, it's very unlikely. So I think that's the difficult part. But again, people are selective. Your perception depends on the quality and the quantity of information that you get. So I think the problem is not the lack of information, but the quality and how valid that is. And even technology is designed pretty much the same way as our mindset. You believe in something, and then you dismiss everything else that doesn't support that. And then you find everything that, and that is it. So I just confirm it. And even AI is very similar to that. If you look at Facebook, you look at Twitter, you look at Google, you find what you're looking for. And it's not a surprise. But you are in charge. You find what you're looking for. So what is the question that you enter? What is the question that you ask yourself? Why are they so stupid? Well, you get a selection of answers. But how can I make the most of this situation? Then this is what you find. But you are in charge of your mindset, not the external environment. And this is what most people try to control. And because it doesn't happen, they get even more stressed. So it's like a rabbit hole going down, down, down. And it's very much in sync with technology as well.
Yeah. Andrew.
So AI versus human stupidity, natural stupidity, it's neck to neck.
No, I think that's spot on. And, there's, I often reference tribe, and I probably at to the extreme level of how we are, we're smart enough to believe that we are not animals, right? That we have biological responses to things. And Csaba, you're absolutely right of how we have biological responses that are there for our survival. So inevitably, the traditional way of management is be super aggressive, very domineering, and scare everyone into performance. And part of that is exactly what Csaba was just mentioning, that then you have a lower sense of security in the organization, so then you don't perform well. Because at that point, you're just trying not to get into trouble. Where I think that if we look at the historical way of rationalizing points, and that I think, again, to your point, that our politicians need to be much better at the Socratic method of, hey, this is what my current perspective is. This is what I understand of your current perspective. Let's rationalize the points, and maybe we can change each other's minds, or come to some kind of middle ground where we have such polarization in political spheres or in our places of work or in our homes. It was interesting of even seeing since lockdown how that's impacted a lot of families and relationships, where people being around each other, then so much more that there could be smaller triggers to ignite an argument and cause some friction, because we will organically go back to the animalistic side and not thinking that, hey, we're smarter than this, let's rationalize our points, let's figure out what the other person is thinking, and then not come from a reactionary place. There's lots of tips of how you can take a breath and just take a deep breath in, and within 3 to 5 seconds, your fight or flight response will drop. So then you can think more rationally. So if you are immediately ignited to react in a certain way, then you can take that moment. But to kind of pull it back to technology, there's been certain ways that we've seen technology being a good player in this. And so I'll always preface that technology is never a replacement for a human. It's really just an enablement tool. And as you mentioned, it definitely carries the bias of whomever taught the machine. So the best use of AI, at least on the conversational realm, and at least in the places that we play in, are delivery of information and collection of information. So it's a place where, rather than having a human send out a survey, like an employee engagement survey, something like that, then the bot can do it. So you're not worried about, hey, is someone going to know when I email this to them that I gave this answer, so then I'm going to be punished for it later on? Because ultimately, we do kind of revert back to the self-interest that we have internally, that we don't want to get in trouble, we don't want to get fired. Generally, pain is or aversion of pain is a greater motivator than seeking reward. So if someone says, hey, I'll give you $1,000 to do this task, or you're going to be fired if you don't do this task, you're more likely to do the task if you think you're going to be fired. And so people will try to avoid anything that will put them at risk. Because again, if you go back to the hunter-gatherer mindset of it, the reason being is it gives us the same feeling as if we were kicked out of a tribe, that you are now off in the cold on your own, you need to hunt on your own, you need to survive on your own. It's a difficult situation. So being able to put in that filter where they no longer believe it's going to impact them from a social standpoint, that they're able to give more candid feedback, the humans are able to sift through and analyze that information in a much more objective way, then we can create better organizations and better communities in turn.
Csaba. So with the global disc in mind, that's a passage, right? A pathway to learning more about what the differences are.
Yes, to me, the most important part is the uncommon mindset itself. Because if you don't have the right mindset, it doesn't matter what kind of tools you have, you're not going to use it. Global Disc is the technology behind it. So you can get to know yourself, you can get to know other people, so you can get along with yourself and others. And that's when you get ahead. There is no shortcut there. And like Andrew said, often people in survival mode are scared, but you just have to step back a little bit. Like fear is just excitement without breathing. So, it's pretty much the same context. It's the same amount of emotion. Just start breathing and it's going to be fine. Because it is true that our brain is just pretty much a moist computer programmed by emotions to seek pleasure and avoid pain. That's the basic function. So what Andrew mentioned, for example, yes, I don't want to be punished, so I'm going to give you the feedback. But if I give you the feedback and there's nothing happening, that's equally bad. And people just learn this helplessness, and they think, you know what, there's no point. It's like, here's a comment box for suggestions, and then the manager goes there and then puts it in the bin. Do you have more? That pisses people off, and then they get really disengaged. But they're not brave enough to leave, so they stay there. And that's the perverse quality, because they're going to damage intentionally your business from the inside, but they're going to smile at you. But that is really, really bad. So global this is good to understand it and to practice different perspectives. So one of the biggest problem is the binary thinking. Everything is black and white nowadays, but it's not. That's why we use the sliding scales. You can put everything there, and we can measure the mindset gap between you and me, you and your company, or you and your country. It doesn't matter. There is always a mindset gap. And it determines what you consider right and what feels wrong. Not what is right, but what you consider right. And there's a big difference there. And that's why we look at cultural and personal differences as clashes of common senses. One is not better than the other one, it's the same level. I've just got limited perspective, and you can compliment me. Or I can believe that you are against me. But you know what, like Andrew said, is it your decision or mine? Can I convince you? But do I want to convince you? Do I want to be right? Or I want to find out the right solution? It's not the same thing. The ego wants to protect itself because it's an illusion. So the ego wants to be right. It doesn't want to do right. There's a very strong distinction there. And once we are stable, then we can be wrong. And there's nothing wrong with that.
So the cultural aspects, individual culture and ethnocentric, blah, 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 the background that we all come from individually, sort of drives all that, because it's human, what is human nature, and then what is your college-educated thoughts? They're two different things sometimes, because we can choose to interact or we can choose to disappear or try to blend in, and to, not raise my hand and say, I disagree, just sort of drift by and become invisible. But that's very conscious. It's not unconscious.
It depends, because your personality determines how you want to behave, and your environment determines how you should or technically have to behave. Like Andrew explained it, we have to belong to a tribe because it gave us that kind of belonging. So it's really primal. So if we get kicked out, then it feels horrible and dangerous. So we learned how to conform to the norms. So for example, just because you were born in the US, it doesn't mean that you're statistically average American. But even if you are not, you learn how to behave like one. Because you can choose to go against the norms, but there are always consequences. Always. It doesn't mean that it's something horrible, but you don't get the best possible outcome, probably. So we learn it. So when we do the coaching and we just peel off these layers, then often people don't even know what is natural to them and what is normal to them, what they are used to. So when you just ask them, who are you, without mentioning your nationality or your job, and they get lost. And here's the problem, because they attach too much significance to one or two labels. I'm a Republican or Democrat. Okay, so if somebody attacks them, we have to protect it at all costs. And this is easy because it's like a prepackaged mindset. They tell you exactly what is right, what is wrong, who you have to love, who you have to hate. You don't have to think. It's a big group. We belong there. We feel good. Everybody else is against us. And it doesn't matter if our expectation doesn't match reality. They just dismiss it. It doesn't matter. So there's no point in trying to convince them with statistics and numbers. It's not going to go in. Learning is emotional. And they did a really good job.
Let's circle back to all this.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times, there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
So, Andrew, Walmart. I read that Walmart's going to start being a place where people can come and get the vaccine because there's so many distribution points, easy for people to get to. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant marketing idea. What do you think of that?
Yeah, so Walmart's really, really good at despite being, the largest organization, obviously they get a lot of negative press. I think they are really, really good at still being kind of community centered, recognizing that in many communities, they're the largest employer, that they are the central place, that people will go and, teenagers will meet up and hang out in a Walmart parking lot. So being an integral part of the local areas, I think is, again, kind of like a primal thing. They are the campfire people go to. It's a sense of security and a sense of belonging there too. So by being the place that they'll distribute the vaccines and they already have the infrastructure to do so, they're not just the largest retailer, they're also the largest grocer. They have one of the largest pharmacy networks, and I believe in the top 3. So each one of those categories, just by the nature of their scale, it's very impactful for it. And and I think that they're between Walmart and CVS jumping in and being, at least in the U.S., being having the physical locations to support these people. CVS is another great example because they themselves see over 5 million people per day in all of their locations throughout the U.S. And those are inconceivable numbers. So being able to use those networks to support the communities, I think, is essential.
Yeah. So Csaba, from your vantage point in Brighton, England, but also in the thought business that you find yourself in, when you look at the latest developments this week in the U.S., particularly with a view of the vaccine distribution and how it's been screwed up. Nobody could figure it out. While they didn't want to give it to Jeff Bezos, CVS and Walmart step up because that's the competition for Prime. And I don't know why they didn't make a deal with Bezos, but Walmart is perfectly positioned, and CVS, of course, too, in the U.S., And I would think the Walgreens Boots retail combination is pretty strong in the UK. And with Walgreens, it's not as prolific as CVS in the US. But it's the same kind of thing, though, isn't it? In the UK, with a lot of the Boots pharmacies all over every village.
To be honest, I didn't hear about that because I know that they open bigger centers, definitely. And then also the GPs went around to the vulnerable people, and especially in the countryside, because they had a level of trust and credibility, so it was easier to convince them. But,
so it's a national health also. I mean, It's like everybody's got to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why probably it's successful, because every decision the government made, that was very similar to the US. It's almost like it's competition. Who can get it more wrong? But with the NHS, they did a pretty awesome job. So the vaccination is going well.
Yeah. Well, here, I think I've already mentioned that I've gotten shot number 1, and the next one's coming up later this week, which I'm really happy about. But it's really been a slow, tortuous process in the U.S., and it's almost unbelievable that it's been so bad, but it is. So I think the latest moves with CVS and Walmart is just perfect. So it's a way of dealing with what's around and bringing closure to this worry about uncertainty, which is how we began this, Csaba. So what do you think with companies? Are they going to, Csaba, what do you think about companies requiring people who visit the office, they must show that they've been vaccinated?
To be honest, I don't really understand the logic behind it, because the pharmaceutical companies made it clear that it doesn't make you immune. It just means that you can still transmit it, you can still get it, but you don't get into hospital. So it's not going to be as serious. So that's why I don't really understand the logic behind it, because it just means that you are more confident to spread it, because you know that nothing bad is going to happen to you. So that's why I don't really understand these passports that you cannot get on the plane unless you have the vaccination. Because if I get it, then I'm going to be even more confident hugging everyone, but they can get it. I cannot. So I'm not sure what's happening, to be honest.
Yeah. Andrew, what do you think of that wrinkle?
Yeah, that is it's interesting because there's a number of different facets of it that, so first, it's become largely political. Second is, you're absolutely right that I think that there's people on extremes, I suppose, with all things, but even like, so I'm generally a hermit on a good day in normal times. So I generally keep to myself and lock myself in the office. But even like venturing out into the world, the little bit that I have, it's funny because you have some people that they are yearning for such a sense of normalcy that they will hug, they will kiss, they will not have any kind of personal barriers. And then you have other people that generally you'll see them with 3 masks on and wearing gloves, and I think that there was a breakdown of even the education part of it, of even what a decontamination process would be like. So a lot of people wear cloth masks, but they never wash them. They'll reuse the same disposable masks, so they're not actually doing anything beneficial. So I think that there's a lot of benefits of how we go about doing these things and how we are able to operate in a sense of kind of normalcy a little bit, but the being able to do it in an actually secure way rather than things that most people wouldn't know that the vaccine has, limited impact, or if you had it, then you can still spread it, and those types of things. And without the education and transfer of information, I think that's the uncertainty causes a lack of stability in certain areas. That if we're looking to have organizations and our communities returning back to normal, we need to have a bit more of a sense of security, and that's just with delivery of, to Csaba's point, of high quality information, that we need to let people know that where to go, what to do, what the timelines are going to be. Whenever there is a high stress situation in our organizations or communities, making sure that there's a clear path is absolutely profoundly helpful. I actually I don't know if you either of you have watched the show Lost before.
No.
But very complex plot line, all of this, but basically the concept is when they have a plane that crash lands on this deserted island. And so what happened, what do you do at that point? And there's this one person who kind of emerges as the leader, and it was because he started providing some kind of sense of, this is what you do now. Like, and he was saying, "What? I'm not a leader. I wasn't looking to kind of take this leadership role, but people just started going to him organically because it was a sense of calm and a sense of stability." And so whenever we have this uncertainty, being able to project that certainty through high quality information, through making sure that, hey, we can be flexible in all these other ways, but this is the base point. You always know where you're going to fall back to. That's how we should handle any disciplinary action within our organizations or any information delivery, any performance evaluations. That's a key one of, I know even personally talking about I kind of digress with this, but throughout my career, some of the years that I thought that I performed the worst were the best performance evaluations I ever had gotten. And the times that I thought that I performed the best, then they may have been the worst. And it's because it wasn't an objective standard. So kind of looking for those foundational pieces to make sure there is structure where we need it, and then providing the flexibility for the innovation, that's key for both our communities and organizations.
So we have about 9 minutes remaining here. Of course, we could go on longer, but I think we all have other things to do. But I really appreciate you guys being on Global TV again. So let's string together, if we can, using technology to bring some certainty because of the information processing, I guess, or the making it available, making info available. And particularly the global disc, which is an intellectual, visual, imaginative thing, and cool, very cool to look at too. We can bring the technology together with this high level of thought that Csaba in his book personify. I think that's got to be a pathway, an answer for strangers to relax around one another and also deliver important stuff, whether it's the vaccine or the information about new certainties that could be beneficial for everybody. Csaba, I didn't mean to go on so long with all this because we're just sort of shooting the breeze here, but we do have a track to run on, and global business, global relationships. Look what we're doing here. This is like the 4th or 5th time you've been on the program, and we've never met personally, and frankly, I can't wait to do that. We can have a pint together, or at least one. But how can the global disc be made more technological?
Well, we already use augmented reality. And, just like Andrew said, technology is not going to replace people. And this, for example, global disc is not going to remove the uniqueness of people. So it doesn't claim that you take the assessment and I tell you who you are. No, not at all. It's a blueprint. It helps you go deeper because 95% of our actions are driven by values and beliefs you're not even aware of. So we cannot even explain it. We can reflect on the symptoms, but how much can you reflect on it? You cannot decrease pollution by increasing the traffic. It's like thinking harder. That is not going to give you the result. So we give you the blueprint. You can go deeper. And we just have to make it more available to people. And I think this is the missing part because first of all, often people don't know they have a problem. They don't know how serious it is because they get used to the pain. They get used to the frustration. It becomes the new norm. And they are not actively looking for a solution that could unlock their potential. So I think the step forward is that we have to make it available to many people and we have to scale it up. But first they have to know who they are and they have an issue and it's causing them a lot of damage because they are losing out on opportunities, time and energy because of the friction with people who think and behave differently and because of friction with themselves, self-sabotage. This is where we lose most of the potential. But we could have it. It's all there and we could unlock it if they could teach this in high schools at least, starting there.
Interesting. Yeah. Andrew.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think that our organizations, so I'm if you've taken the Berkman before, I'm a Berkman Red. And I think that the best way I can compare that to is that I think we have a lot of organizations that do have leadership that are Berkman-led. So just like executors, and they will look to solve problems by quickly executing on them. Meanwhile, some strategy and thoughtfulness behind initiatives is really what would make them impactful. And I say that because, and Csaba brought up a very good point, that when we talk about things like diversity and inclusion or workforce cohesion, helping our people get along well, and therefore, so getting along well will end up making them more productive, making them more innovative, all the things to drive revenue within our organizations. We focus on the wrong things sometimes. So right now, specific to diversity and inclusion, we say, okay, diversity and inclusion, we need to hire more diverse people. Okay, fine, good. We're hiring now a diverse staff. Now everyone looks different, but did we make sure that they were thinking differently? And did we, and are we doing anything to make sure that they get along well and work together well, or are we just looking to hire for numbers? When I speak with a lot of diversity leaders, I bring this up that at that point, you can tell a lot by what your goals are. If your goals are to have X percentage of certain groups, that's not a sustainable goal, because that will ebb and flow, that will flux with each cycle. So, hey, we're doing really well with the goals this month, but then there was a restructure or something happened, and now we're not doing so well in those numbers. When they missed that, what we need to do is focus on how people work well together, have environments that they can work well together, have the foundational items that they can work well together, and that they understand themselves so they can. So in many cases, when we look at employee resource groups, those are a very popular thing right now. And I don't want to discount the importance of ERGs in our organizations, but what those functionally do are build communities of people who look the same way, and then put them together to bring up problems for their group. So by its nature, it's exclusive, and then the leadership of the organization will just see ERGs raising more and more challenges without recognizing that, hey, we're not looking just for this group or just for this group. We're looking for the collective of how people work together well, how they share ideas, and how to objectively make sure that we are improving the cohesion with our teams, so then we can drive innovation and revenue, and not just have a team that, hey, we check the box, people may look different, but again, are they, if you take one city in the US, I'll use Denver as an example, and you picked a whole bunch of people that grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same university, and they may physically look different. That will not be the same as if you took someone that may look identically the same, but grew up in 5 different nations. Those are the things that we need to be much more intentional about in our professional profiles, and then also in our workforce cohesion initiatives to make sure that people are understanding themselves and open to understanding others through rationalization and thought, rather than directives of, hey, you two, you're totally different. You may have cultural conflicts, but get along or else.
Csaba.
It's a very good point, because there are so many outdated and incomplete ideas in our field that companies often have the budget and the intention to invest, and they don't realize that they are not going to get the results they are hoping for those exact reasons. Because diversity is pretty cool until somebody disagrees with you. And that's why that's a common practice, that we employ a full range of skin colors because it looks good on the website, but everybody thinks like you. So you should still have the same tunnel vision as a team, just like as an individual. But it's equally bad when, for example, we criticize a pure white company, believing that they are all the same. That's not exactly true. It might be, but not necessarily true. So I'm not saying that you have to choose. No, it has to be a combination. So is it about ticking the boxes? Is it for marketing purposes? Or is it for performance? You need both. But this is not something that we just can use. It's not something that we know. At least most people don't. I didn't. I had to learn it. And still, it's really difficult sometimes when somebody triggers, you know exactly what's happening, but you still don't like the person. So that's when it takes effort. So let's become curious. Let's get to know that point of view. Just because they disagree with me, it doesn't mean they are wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. What if I think I'm heading towards the right direction, but it's not true? So I'm just more confident? Yeah, but that doesn't make it more efficient. So let's become more curious and open-minded. And that's the goal. But that's all about the interaction between people. And we don't have to go far away to find people who think and behave differently.
So Andrew, what kind of a headline or a subheadline should I put on this show? What was this about?
Yeah. So I would say, it would take me a minute to put like some marketing flair. But I'd say something around the importance of human connection and using technology in order to get there. Again,
that's a good one.
Programs, we have technology, and we will solve for symptoms rather than the disease. That if we say, hey, we're not a very diverse company, let's hire for appearance, that's not solving the problem. Or our teams are not getting along, so let's do something aggressive to make sure they get along without them having the tools to do so. We can't have a team builder where everyone goes and does like an escape room, which are fun things to do, and they are helpful, but they don't do anything really at the core. If you have someone, I know even during my time with Walmart, there was people that they would bring in from other countries, and they may not have had any intercultural training. And so you may have lived your entire life in India, and you are expected to not just meld well with U.S. culture, but Southern U.S. culture that is an entire subsect that I get culture shock from being a U.S. citizen of growing up in the Northeast. So we have expectations that, and we do tend to be ethnocentric, definitely in the U.S., and I think globally, we should always understand that there are values of any satellite offices or teams that we work with globally. And now we're getting a great example of that, being able to have conversations like this that hit multiple continents within a single phone call.
Thank you. Csaba, what headline would you give this show?
I think it's difficult to summarize it. But for example, what Andrew described, that the most companies focus on diversity instead of inclusion. And that's why they're asking for trouble. Because that company was really diverse, but not inclusive. But if you focus on inclusion, you get it right, diversity is going to increase. But if you do it the other way around, you're asking for trouble. And sometimes it's all about ticking the boxes. So they spend much more money on surveys than on actual implementation, on intervention to help people get along. So to me, it's all about the uncommon mindset. Have that. Become curious. Get to know yourself. If you can get along with yourself and others, then you can get ahead. There's no shortcut there. And I think most people fail at the first step. Low self-esteem, insecurity, they don't even know who they are. So they have to belong to a group. And that becomes the main part of the identity, instead of using it as a label, as one of many. And this is who I am. Then it's a safe place.
Well, this has been a fascinating time for me, and thank you for doing this. And come back and do it again, please.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Thank you so much. Good chatting with you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.